Chapter 13. Outside the Scripture Pavilion. The shadow's back quickly broke out in cold sweat. However, even so, the shadow still did not dare to move. Even his breathing was faint, for fear of disturbing Su Qin. As a member of the demon sect, the shadow knew very well that he had taken a great risk in sneaking into the Shaolin Temple. But the shadow had no choice. The sect master's orders cannot be disobeyed, plus he had some thoughts, so he forced himself to come. Originally, the shadow thought that even if he did not steal the I Jing Jing in the end, with his stealth, there should be no problem for him to retreat. But the shadow did not expect that before he even entered the Scripture Pavilion, he would be forced to show up. The Shaolin Temple is too terrifying. Just a random sweeping monk has such strength? The shadow felt bitter in his heart. Su Qin didn't know what the shadow was thinking, but he could see that the shadow should be very nervous at this moment. The internal strength in his body was running wildly and could erupt at any time. It's just that, this did not arouse Su Qin's interest at all. If the shadow was a grade 1 great grandmaster, Su Qin would be more serious. However, the shadow was just a grade 4 martial artist, not even grade 3. Even if he erupts, Su Qin can kill him with a slap. But I can't drag it on like this. The shadow's thoughts turned sharply, thinking about his situation. The Scripture Pavilion is an important place of the Shaolin Temple. There are monks patrolling the area at all times. The shadow took advantage of the gap to sneak in. But the time left for him is certainly not too long. If he continues to drag it on, even if Su Qin doesn't do anything, the patrolling monks will find him. At that time, Black Shadow will face the pursuit of the Shaolin Temple, a great sect. Thinking of this, the shadow gritted his teeth. Fight. 3 silver needles quietly appeared in the shadow's right hand. These 3 silver needles are made of dark iron and are designed to break through internal strength protection. Even martial artists in the upper realm will suffer if they are not prepared. Go for me. A trace of distress flashed on the shadow's face. The 3 silver needles turned into a poisonous snake and rushed towards Su Qin. At this time, the shadow retreated and turned to flee outside the Shaolin Temple. In a flash, the shadow had already escaped dozens of meters away. He didn't chase me? The shadow looked happy and subconsciously turned his head to look at Su Qin. The shadow's pupils shrank slightly. Because the 3 silver needles shot towards Su Qin with a bone-piercing chill, but Su Qin did not make any movement to dodge, as if he was scared silly. How is this possible? In the eyes of the shadow, Su Qin was at least a martial artist in the upper realm. Although the silver needles were silent, if a martial artist in the upper realm wanted to avoid it, it shouldn't be a problem. Did I see wrongly? Is this sweeping monk not an expert but an ordinary person? The black shadow was inwardly furious. The next moment, the silver needle silently pierced into Su Qin's chest. However, the image of the silver needles entering the body did not appear. Instead, the silver needles made of black iron turned into scrap iron and fell to the ground. The shadow was stunned. Then, a chill suddenly exploded in his mind. He blocked the black iron silver needles with his body? How is this possible? The shadow's heart trembled violently as if he saw a ghost. In an instant, the shadow desperately activated the forbidden technique, increased his speed to the extreme, and fled frantically. You want to run after making a move? Su Qin sneered and raised his right hand. Wisps of non-phase tribulation force collided with each other. Buzz. A wisp of non-phase tribulation force shot out, crossing hundreds of meters, and instantly blasted on the shadow's body. The shadow snorted. Not only did he not stop, but he used this force to escape at an even more terrifying speed. Seeing this scene, Su Qin did not continue to chase. Instead, he bent down and picked up the silver needles that had turned into scrap iron. This should be the black iron that specializes in breaking a martial artist's inner force? Su Qin sized it up and thought with interest. In today's world, although martial artists were rampant, they were not truly unscrupulous. For example, the black iron in front of him was the nemesis of martial artists. However, the production of black iron had always been low, and it was in the hands of the various countries. Ordinary martial artists could not see it. Su Qin looked at it for a while, then with a pinch of his hand, he crushed the fragments of the silver needles into powder and sprinkled it on the ground, scattering it with the wind. It was true that black iron was used to break through a martial artist's internal strength, but Su Qin had already reached the great accomplishment stage of invincible Vajra divine art. His body had reached the peak of Yang and was invincible. How could black iron shake him? Besides, even if Su Qin did not master the invincible Vajra divine art, with his powerful inner force of a first-grade martial artist, the black iron could not do anything to him. Although the black iron restrained a martial artist's inner force, any restraint was relative. It was like water restraining fire. But if one used a small bowl of water to face a monstrous fire, what would they use to restrain it? Half a day later, hundreds of miles away from the Shaolin Temple, in a gloomy hall. This hall was located in a remote area, and there was almost no one nearby, but it was a branch of the demon sect. At this moment, a group of people gathered in the hall, as if waiting for some news. Each of them had a strong aura. Obviously, they were all martial artists, and they were powerful martial artists. They were at least in the middle realm, and there were even some in the upper realm. Sect Master, you sent people to the Shaolin Temple to steal the I Jin Jing. I'm afraid this matter was not considered properly. No matter what, the Shaolin Temple is still a great sect of the world. A plump woman frowned and asked, "Huh? A great sect of the world?" At this time, a cold old man sneered. Since 60 years ago, the last first grade of the Shaolin Temple, a holy monk, passed away. The Shaolin Temple has not had a first grade for 60 years. Without a first grade, it does not deserve to be called a great sect of the world. When these words came out, suddenly, there was a sound of agreement in the hall. Yes, those bald donkeys in the Shaolin Temple, besides being able to recite scriptures, what else can they do? Not to mention that the sect master just sent people to take away the I Jin Jing, even if it was to destroy the Shaolin Temple. What's so difficult about it? What the demon sect wants, the Shaolin Temple dares to refuse? The hall was in an uproar. After a while, the man in a purple robe sitting in the main seat of the hall said, "Okay, stop." As soon as the man in a purple robe spoke, the hall became quiet. I sent people to sneak into the Shaolin Temple. In addition to wanting to borrow the I Jin Jing to heal, I also wanted to use this to test the Shaolin Temple. When the purple-robed man said this, he paused for a moment before continuing. If we really get the I Jin Jing, it will prove that the Shaolin Temple has completely declined. It's just a facade, and the demon sect will attack the Shaolin Temple soon. When these words came out, everyone in the hall was amazed. The sect master's plan is really far-reaching. Those bald donkeys in the Shaolin Temple, I'm afraid they don't even know that their every move has been calculated by the sect master. The man in a purple robe smiled slightly and did not continue. At this moment, a black shadow staggered into the hall. "You're back? Did you get the I Jin Jing?" The man in a purple robe recognized the black shadow and asked lightly. "Sect master." The black shadow opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but his face was as pale as a sheet. "Are you injured?" The man in a purple robe frowned. When the others in the hall saw this scene, they were immediately dissatisfied. The Shaolin Temple is really bold. How dare they hurt our demon sect people? Sect master, as long as you give the order now, we will join forces to attack the Shaolin Temple and kill them all. Yes, sect master, give the order quickly. Many demon sect martial artists clamored. However, compared to these demon sect martial artists, the man in a purple robe sitting in the main seat felt that something was wrong. The man in a purple robe took a step forward and appeared in front of the black shadow. "Who hurt you?" The man in a purple robe stretched out his right hand, wanting to check the black shadow's injury. However, just as the man in a purple robe circulated his internal force to explore the black shadow's body, he seemed to have touched something. A wisp of aura suddenly burst out, penetrating the black shadow's body and turning into a finger force, silently pressing towards the man in a purple robe. The man in a purple robe's expression changed. He subconsciously raised his hand to block it. Boom! A terrifying shock came. The man in a purple robe retreated 8 steps and finally spat out a mouthful of blood before barely stopping. 100 miles away, the change is at the heart. This is a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster using someone else's hand to warn the demon sect. The man in a purple robe suddenly raised his head, looking at the black shadow whose aura was cut off, and muttered to himself. As soon as these words came out, there was dead silence in the hall. Chapter 14. The Great Hall was dark. Many demon sect martial artists looked panicked. How could they have expected that a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would take action? Isn't it said that the Shaolin Temple doesn't have a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster? A cold old man said bitterly. Just now, he had said that he would destroy the Shaolin Temple, but at this moment he didn't dare to say a word. It must be known that a Shaolin Temple with a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and a Shaolin Temple without a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster are 2 completely different concepts. Sect Master, are you okay? The plump woman looked at the purple-robed man and couldn't help but ask. I'm fine. The purple-robed man's aura calmed down. A Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is indeed powerful, but it is impossible for him to kill me from hundreds of miles away. The purple-robed man's tone contained great confidence. He is a peak Grade 2 martial artist. If he was not eager for quick success and wanted to enter Grade 1 as soon as possible, he would not have suffered cultivation deviation and needed the Shaolin Temple's I Jin Jing to heal. But even if he suffered cultivation deviation, the purple-robed man is not weaker than an ordinary Grade 2 martial artist. Since the Shaolin Temple has a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and used his hand to warn the demon sect, some plans have to be changed. The purple-robed man sat back on the seat of honor and said lightly. When the other demon sect martial artists heard this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Since 50 years ago, the demon sect master went into seclusion to break through the illusory legend realm. In the past 50 years, the demon sect has lost a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and its power has shrunk sharply. If it weren't for this generation's demon sect master's great talent and vision, the demon sect would have long been hated by everyone. But even so, no one in the hall is willing to face a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. What is the sect master going to do? The plump woman asked. Since the Shaolin Temple is not good, then choose Giant Sun Mountain. The purple-robed man thought for a while and said, Giant Sun Mountain? Many demon sect martial artists in the Great Hall looked at each other. Compared to Shaolin Temple, a major martial arts sect that had existed for thousands of years, Giant Sun Mountain's foundation was much weaker. But in any case, Giant Sun Mountain is a force that once produced a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Although this generation is weak and there is no Grade 1, there are still a lot of good things in the Mountain Gate. I want to use the blood of several thousand disciples of Giant Sun Mountain as a sacrifice to heal my injuries. A hint of brutality flashed across the purple-robed man's eyes. Shaolin Temple. Su Qin naturally didn't know that because of his casual actions, Giant Sun Mountain was about to face a calamity of destruction. At this moment, Su Qin had already returned to the Chore's courtyard. When the formless finger force that he had left in the black figure exploded, Su Qin raised his head as if he had sensed something. The formless finger of disaster is formless and formless. It can change according to one's will, as expected of the Shaolin Temple's secret technique. Su Qin nodded slightly. In the past 10 years, Su Qin has been signing in everywhere in the Shaolin Temple and obtained many secret techniques, but the formless finger of disaster is very rare. Based on this alone, the formless finger of disaster is enough to rank in the top 800 among Su Qin's secret techniques. But I am already Grade 1, why can't I use Buddha's palm? Su Qin rubbed his eyebrows and thought helplessly. As the Shaolin Temple's strongest divine art, Su Qin has great expectations for Buddha's palm. When he was in the lower and middle realms, Su Qin thought that his strength was low and did not reach the minimum standard to use Buddha's palm. But now, Su Qin is already Grade 1. Even in the world, he is a top powerhouse. But the golden body of Buddha in the depths of Su Qin's mud pill palace, which represents the inheritance of Buddha's palm, is still standing firm. Could it be that Buddha's palm is an Arhat-level divine art, and only those who have truly attained the Arhat level are qualified to comprehend and use it? Su Qin guessed in his heart. In fact, according to what Su Qin has heard in the Shaolin Temple for the past 10 years, even 900 years ago, when Buddha's palm was not lost, almost no disciple of the Shaolin Temple could comprehend this strongest divine art. Forget it, let's not think about it anymore. Su Qin shook his head and shook off the distracting thoughts in his heart. In the next half a month, Su Qin returned to his previous life, sweeping the floor and signing in when he had nothing to do. After entering Grade 1, Su Qin's cultivation progress has significantly slowed down, but with a large number of heaven and earth treasures obtained from signing in, he is still slowly moving towards the real Arhat level. On this day, Su Qin was just about to go to the Bodhi court to sign in when he heard other disciples whispering. I heard that the demon sect massacred the giant Sun Mountain. Hey, the world is not peaceful now, there is constant friction between countries, and disputes are everywhere. It is said that a rare genius appeared in the Wudang Mountain true martial lineage. He finished the Tai Chi Heart Road in 3 hours. Daoist Zhang personally came forward and accepted him as a pro-disciple. Amazing, Daoist Zhang is one of the few Grade 1 great grandmasters in the world. Almost all of his pro-disciples have entered the upper realm. Many disciples of the handyman court were talking excitedly. This is also one of the few interests of the handyman court disciples. Unlike other courts, the handyman court does not need to practice martial arts, so in their spare time, they will discuss the world situation. It is said that the descendants of Xiao Li's flying dagger have also appeared. What? Xiao Li's flying dagger? Is it the Xiao Li's flying dagger who is known as Never Miss, the flying dagger? Yes, the descendant of this generation of flying dagger has just been born, and he killed an upper realm evil martial artist with a flying dagger, causing a great disturbance. Not only Xiao Li's flying dagger, but also another important Buddhist place like the Shaolin Temple, the Vajra Temple, has also produced a Buddha. Su Qin listened to the discussion of the disciples with great interest. In today's world, countries exist side by side, and there is endless chaos. Every day, martial artists fall and sects are destroyed, and the Shaolin Temple, as a great sect with thousands of years of inheritance, is a pure land. At the very least, he will not be disturbed often. Su Qin felt more and more that his choice was correct. It is perfect to sign in at the Shaolin Temple and wait until he is invincible. It is still too dangerous outside. Su Qin slowly walked towards the Bodhi court, his thoughts fluctuating. Whether it is the genius of Wudang true martial lineage who completed the Tai Chi Heart Road, the descendant of Xiao Li's flying dagger, or the Buddha of the Vajra Temple, they are all proud figures. They are either fully cultivated by their sects or have the support of their ancestors. Compared with them, Su Qin is just a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple. They didn't have any resources, and they didn't have any ancestors. External resources are very important for martial arts cultivation. Even if one is talented, if there is a lack of resources, their future achievements will be very limited. Although I, Su Qin, am alone and have no resource support, I have stepped into Grade 1 step by step with my own efforts. I am not weaker than others. Su Qin walked to the Bodhi court and stopped. Chapter 15. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtain the medicinal pill, Spirit Accumulation Pill. Spirit Accumulation Pill? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. He was very satisfied. The Spirit Accumulation Pill is a very special kind of medicinal pill. It can neither strengthen the body like the marrow cleansing pill, nor can it strengthen the internal strength like the great revitalizing pill. The Spirit Accumulation Pill has only one effect: nourishing divinity. What is divinity? In Su Qin's view, divinity is a general term for a person's essence, energy, and spirit. In Taoist terms, it is an illusory substance like the nascent soul. Generally speaking, ordinary martial artists, even if they are Grade 2 martial artists, do not need to nourish divinity. because the fight between martial artists is basically a collision of the body and internal strength. As for divinity, even if it is a grade 1 great grandmaster, the divinity in their body is very weak. However, if a grade 1 great grandmaster wants to go further and achieve Arhat's fruit or enter the legend realm, they need to constantly nourish their divinity. The body of a martial artist in the upper realm is connected to heaven and earth and is constantly being washed by the world's essence chi. Legends, on the other hand, have complete control of the world's essence chi and can sweep away everything with a wave of their hand. Drawing the world's essence chi and controlling the world's essence chi are two completely different concepts. The latter is many times stronger than the former. And what does a martial artist rely on to control the world's essence chi? In front of the mighty world's essence chi, a martial artist's body is not worth mentioning. And if you want to completely control the world's essence chi, you can only rely on a powerful divinity. This is the case for Arhat's fruit, and the same is true for legends. The spirit accumulation pill that Su Qin obtained from signing in is a medicinal pill used to nourish divinity. In today's world, anything related to divinity is extremely rare, enough to cause a fight between two grade 1 great grandmasters. Not to mention the spirit accumulation pill, which can directly nourish divinity. Let's wait for a while. Once the spirit accumulation pill is taken, it cannot be stopped. If it is disturbed halfway, the efficacy will be greatly reduced. Su Qin thought silently. In any case, he had already endured 10 years. What difference would a few more days make? Su Qin is a very patient person. Otherwise, he would not have stayed in the Shaolin Temple after becoming a grade 1 great grandmaster, striving to be invincible in the world. Late at night, everything was silent. Su Qin quietly left the chores yard and came to a simple and crude secret room. This secret chamber was located underground and had been casually built by Su Qin over the past 10 years. Whoosh! Su Qin sat cross-legged, exhaled softly, and swallowed the divine accumulation pill. Boom! In an instant, Su Qin felt as if he was soaked in a hot spring. His whole body was warm and comfortable. Several hours later, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. An illusory bolt of lightning flashed across the secret chamber. Lightning from the void. This wasn't real lightning, but a phenomenon that would only occur when a god reached a certain level of strength. A single divine accumulation pill actually increased my spirit by 50%. Su Qin felt it carefully and nodded slightly. If there was no divine accumulation pill, Su Qin would have needed at least 5 years to grow his god to this extent. A divine accumulation pill saved Su Qin 5 years of hard work. At the same time, thousands of miles away from the Shaolin Temple, another majestic and solemn Buddhist place, the Vajra Temple, was located here. The Vajra Temple is also one of the great sects in the world. However, compared to the decline of the Shaolin Temple, the Vajra Temple is in a period of prosperity. The current abbot of the Vajra Temple is a famous grade 1A holy monk. And at this moment, under the golden body of the Buddha enshrined in the Vajra Temple, the abbot looked at a young monk with a pious face and said with satisfaction, "Ba Tu'a, you have read all the Buddhist scriptures in the temple. Now the Vajra Temple has nothing to teach you. Let's go down the mountain. Go to the north." The Shaolin Temple in the north is the head of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world. It is said to have inherited the Buddha's palm. Although it has declined in recent years and the Buddha's palm has disappeared, it still has a strong foundation. Go to the Shaolin Temple and you will definitely gain something. The abbot looked at Ba Tu'a and said slowly, although the abbot of the Vajra Temple is a grade 1A holy monk, when facing this young monk named Ba Tu'a, he faintly felt like he was an equal. Because this young monk named Ba Tu'a was very special. Ba Tu'a was born in a small village outside the Vajra Temple. When he was born, the entire village was covered by faint Buddhist chants. When Ba Tu'a was 3 years old, he often sat in front of the dilapidated Buddha statue in the village for an entire day. When the current abbot of the Vajra Temple found Ba Tu'a, he was already 12 years old. At first glance, The abbot discovered that Ba Tuo had an extraordinary understanding of Buddhism and allowed him to enter the Vajra temple. In the short 8 years since Ba Tuo entered the Vajra temple, he had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the Vajra temple and often debated with the senior monks of the temple. Even the abbot himself had lost to Ba Tuo. This was simply inconceivable. One had to know that the abbot was a grade 1A holy monk. His understanding of Buddhism was actually surpassed by Ba Tuo, who was only 20 years old. If this were to spread out, it would definitely shock a group of people to the point where their jaws would drop. Not only that, Ba Tuo had an extremely terrifying understanding of Buddhist techniques. In just 8 years after entering the Vajra temple, he had already entered the middle 3 realms. This almost made the abbot think that Ba Tuo was the reincarnation of one of the Buddhist arhat. It was precisely because of this that the abbot of the Vajra temple directly appointed Ba Tuo as this generation's bodhisattva, equivalent to the abbot's future successor. Shaolin temple? Ba Tuo raised his head and looked directly at the abbot, his tone slightly puzzled. Correct. Yes, it is the Shaolin temple. The abbot of the Vajra temple nodded. The Shaolin temple has been passed down for thousands of years and has produced many arhat Buddhas. Its foundation is unfathomable. This time, you are going to the Shaolin temple in the name of the Vajra temple to discuss Buddhism with the younger generation of the Shaolin temple. The abbot of the Vajra temple smiled. Every few decades, the 4 Buddhist temples in the world would have an exchange, which was called on Buddhism. The reason why the Shaolin temple was the head of the 4 temples in the world was because the Shaolin temple always had the advantage in the previous on Buddhism. But this time, the abbot of the Vajra temple was very much looking forward to seeing what kind of disciple the Shaolin temple would bring to face Ba Tuo. Yes, abbot. Ba Tuo bowed slightly and replied. Remember, although Buddhism pursues being aloof from worldly affairs, this on Buddhism is different. On Buddhism is a battle of ideals between the 4 Buddhist temples. You can only win, not lose. The abbot of the Vajra temple reminded. Understood, abbot. Ba Tuo turned around and left, starting to prepare for the trip to the Shaolin temple. After Ba Tuo left, the abbot of the Vajra temple stood under the golden Buddha with a smile on his face. Chapter 16. Time flew by. Another half a month passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, many major events happened in the world, but it did not affect the Shaolin temple at all. Su Qin's life was still the same as before. He signed in on time every day and listened to the gossip of the Chore's court disciples. However, on this day, Su Qin's peaceful days were broken. 9 monks from the Vajra temple came to the Shaolin temple. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads personally greeted them outside the Great Strength Hall to show their respect. The disciples of the various courts also stood outside the Great Strength Hall. Vajra temple? Su Qin looked at the 9 monks from the Vajra temple. The leader of the 9 monks was very young, about 20 years old, and looked solemn. As for the other 8, Su Qin looked at the monk standing behind the young monk. He was wearing a red robe and a crown. This monk's aura was no weaker than Abbot Huiwen's. He was a 2nd-grade grandmaster. As for the other 7 monks, although their auras were different, but overall, they were all middle-realm martial artists. What a big show! Su Qin muttered in his heart. Although he did not know the purpose of the Vajra temple, it was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. Sure enough, Su Qin soon learned from the whispers of the disciples that this group of Vajra temple monks came here to discuss Buddhism with the Shaolin temple. Did you see that? The young monk at the front is the Buddha of the Vajra temple, Ba Tuo. He has deep Buddhist roots. It is said that this Buddha was born with a vision of Buddhism. There's also a rumor that this arhat is the reincarnation of an arhat of Buddhism. If the other party is really the reincarnation of arhat, wouldn't the Shaolin temple have no chance of winning? Let's wait and see. Maybe the abbot and the court heads have a way? Many disciples of the Shaolin temple whispered. Even the Chore's yard disciples were worried sick at heart. As disciples of the Shaolin temple, they had long shared the honor and disgrace of the Shaolin temple. Naturally, they couldn't bear to see the Shaolin temple lose to the Jin Gang temple. Namo Amitabha. Abbot Huiwen put his palms together and said, "You have all come from afar. The Shaolin Temple will naturally treat you well. Let's prepare the vegetarian meal." Ba Tuo, the Bodhisattva of the Vajra Temple, bowed slightly and said, "I've long heard that the abbot is an eminent monk of the Buddhist sections. Sorry to disturb you this time." After the vegetarian meal, Abbot Huiwen then began to discuss Buddhism. On Buddha was the tradition of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world. Only monks below the age of 20 could participate. In this way, they could measure the strength of the younger generation of the 4 Buddhist sects and confirm who was the head of the 4 Buddhist sects. Abbot Huiwen, Ba Tuo of the Vajra Temple will participate in this on Buddha. At this moment, the second-rank monk in red robes with a crown on his head stood out and said. As soon as he said this, Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads frowned. After all, the rules of the Buddha Symposium in the past were that both sides would send out 9 disciples each, and they would discuss Buddha Symposium in turn before deciding the victor. But now, the Vajra Temple only sent out Ba Tuo. It was obvious that they wanted to use Ba Tuo alone to deal with the 9 disciples of the Shaolin Temple. This was simply looking down on the Shaolin Temple. Even with Abbot Huiwen's cultivation, he didn't look right at this moment. The hot-tempered warrior monastery head glared at the 9 monks of the Vajra Temple. Facing the pressure of the Shaolin Temple, the second-rank monk of the Vajra Temple didn't care at all. On Buddha was a battle of Buddhist ideals between the Vajra Temple and the Shaolin Temple. They could only win and not lose. What was the big deal about angering the Shaolin Temple? And some of the Shaolin Temple disciples were even more indignant. Isn't the Vajra Temple too arrogant? They only sent 1 disciple to participate in on Buddha? That's right. The Shaolin Temple is a big martial arts sect in the world, the head of the 4 Buddhist temples. How dare the Vajra Temple send 1 disciple to compete with the 9 disciples of the Shaolin Temple on Buddha? Even if Ba Tuo is a bodhisattva, so what? It's not like the Shaolin Temple hasn't had a bodhisattva before. This is simply a provocation. Many disciples of the Shaolin Temple looked at the people of the Vajra Temple unkindly. It was said that Buddhism didn't pursue competitiveness. But at this moment, the Vajra Temple was right in front of them. If they still pretended not to see it, they wouldn't be practicing Buddhism, but practicing stone. Buddhism wasn't emotionless and desireless. There was also an angry Vajra in Buddhism. Only Su Qin still had a calm expression on his face, as if he was not moved at all. Namo Amitabha. Abbot Huiwen was silent for a moment and said, "In that case, let's begin." As soon as Abbot Huiwen's voice faded, Ba Tuo of the Vajra Temple stepped forward and sat down cross-legged in front of the great Buddha hall. "Zhenyuan," Abbot Huiwen said softly. A monk in a monk's robe walked out and stood in front of the great Buddha hall, facing Ba Tuo. "It's Brother Zhenyuan. Brother Zhenyuan is the most valued disciple of the Commandment Yard. It's said that he has a profound understanding of Buddhism and often debates with the yard head." That's right. Brother Zhenyuan is going to suppress the Vajra Temple and let them know who the head of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world is. Many disciples of the Shaolin Temple were excited when they saw Zhenyuan step forward. Obviously, Zhenyuan, a disciple of the Shaolin Temple, had a special place in their hearts. Zhenyuan. Su Qin also looked at Zhenyuan. As a disciple of the Zhen generation, Su Qin had some impression of Zhenyuan. "Brother Zhenyuan, who do you think will win? Brother Zhenyuan or that bodhisattva?" A disciple of the Chor's yard asked in a low voice. Su Qin had been in the temple for 10 years. Although he was still a sweeping monk, he obviously had some experience. Needless to say, senior brother Zhenyuan will definitely win. Before Su Qin could speak, another disciple next to him interjected. Su Qin heard this and shook his head slightly. The Vajra Temple had 9 spots, but they only sent Ba Tuo. There were only 2 possibilities. First, the Vajra Temple was stupid. Second, the Vajra Temple was confident that they would win. As long as Ba Tuo was there, it didn't matter if they sent 1 or 9 people. The Vajra Temple and the Shaolin Temple were the 4 Buddhist temples in the world. They were famous martial artists, so they couldn't be stupid. So there was only one possibility. The Vajra Temple was very confident in Ba Tuo. They were so confident that as long as the Shaolin Temple defeated Ba Tuo, the Vajra Temple would admit defeat. While Su Qin was thinking, the On Buddha between Ba Tuo and Zhen Yuan began. "Brother, you came from afar. Of course, you will speak first," Zhen Yuan said with a solemn face. The head of the commandment yard saw this and nodded secretly. Zhen Yuan was the disciple he was most proud of. His understanding of Buddhism was better than ordinary people. Otherwise, the abbot wouldn't have sent Zhen Yuan first. One had to know that the first drum of energy would weaken the second and exhaust the third. If the Shaolin Temple lost the first round, it would be a blow to the morale of the following disciples. Ba Tuo didn't decline. He put his palms together and said, "This is what I heard. Buddha's here." Chapter 17. The result of the first On Buddha round was as Su Qin had expected. In less than 15 minutes, True Essence's face turned pale and he didn't know how to respond. Although True Essence was well versed in Buddhism, he had underestimated the arhat of the Diamond Temple. Ba Tuo's every word seemed to have turned into a Buddhist mantra that was imprinted in his mind until it turned into a Buddha mountain that crushed him. "I lost." True Essence got up, his eyes dimmed. The On Buddha round of the 4 Buddhist temples wasn't a pugilistic world duel, but the former was definitely more dangerous than the latter. Both sides of the duel would at most suffer physical injuries. As long as the injuries weren't too severe, it wasn't hard to recover. But On Buddha was a battle of ideals. Once one lost, although one's body would be fine, one's mind would be severely damaged. One might even fall into self-doubt and form an inner demon. Once the inner demon was formed, one might not be able to progress further for the rest of his life. As True Essence's battle ended, the disciples of the Shaolin Temple felt their hearts turn cold. They had high hopes for True Essence. They thought that with True Essence's understanding of Buddhism, even if he couldn't beat the arhat of the Diamond Temple, he wouldn't lose too badly. But in the end, True Essence didn't even last 15 minutes before he got up and admitted defeat. What did this mean? It meant that True Essence's understanding of Buddhism was far inferior to Ba Tuo's. "Thank you." Ba Tuo's expression didn't change. Instead, he put his hands together and bowed slightly to True Essence. "Abbot Huiwen, arrange for the next one." The second-rank monk of the Diamond Temple looked at Abbot Huiwen and said, "Humph." The head of the commandment yard snorted and looked at the gloomy True Essence with a pained expression. True Essence was his most valued disciple. How could he not be moved by such a blow? "Namo Amit Ba." Abbot Huiwen looked deeply at Ba Tuo and said again, "Zhenke." "Abbot." The second disciple of the Shaolin Temple got up and sat where True Essence had been sitting. The second round of On Buddha started again. Boring. Su Qin watched for a while and felt rather bored, so he took the opportunity to slip out. The Chore's yard disciples were originally located in a corner. Coupled with the fact that Su Qin was extremely inconspicuous, no one noticed him. Initially, I thought that the Buddhists were aloof from worldly affairs. But by the looks of it, that wasn't the case. Su Qin first went to the scripture pavilion and used up today's sign in opportunity. Then he found a place where no one would disturb him and took a Yun spirit pill. Several hours later, Su Qin arrived at the Great Strength Hall once again. However, this time, Su Qin clearly felt that the atmosphere among the disciples was much more oppressive. "We've lost, we've all lost," a nearby disciple of the labor court muttered with a dazed gaze. "They all lost?" Su Qin looked at the front of the Grand Hall. At this moment, Zhen Wu, a disciple of Abbot Huiwen, was sitting across from the arhat of Jin Gang Temple. Zhen Wu was the most outstanding disciple of the Zhen generation. He was accepted as a disciple by Abbot Huiwen as soon as he entered the temple. And Zhen Wu's performance did not disappoint Abbot Huiwen. Whether it was his understanding of Buddhism or his progress in Buddhist martial arts, he could be said to be the best of the younger generation of the Shaolin Temple. Even Abbot Huiwen was prepared to train Zhen Wu as the next abbot of Shaolin. According to previous rounds of On Buddha, disciples like Zhen Wu would definitely be placed last to play a role as a stabilizing force. But at this moment, Zhen Wu went on stage. There was only one possibility: The first 8 disciples of the Shaolin Temple who participated in On Buddha had all lost. So fast? Su Qin was slightly surprised. In less than half a day, the Arhat of Jingang Temple had defeated 8 disciples of the Shaolin Temple in a row. It should be 9. Because at this moment, Zhen Wu was obviously at a disadvantage in On Buddha against Ba Tuo. He could not hold on for long. Half an hour later. All Dharma is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, like dew, like lightning. Ba Tuo's words were like heavenly flowers. His tone was gentle as if he could cut off all worries, eliminate all demons, eliminate all karma, and reach the shore. Senior brother, thank you for letting me win. Ba Tuo slowly got up, put his hands together, and said with a solemn expression. Zhen Wu was still sitting cross-legged, but his face was as pale as paper. Obviously, he had lost. Namo Amitabha. The second-grade monk of the Jingang Temple looked happy and recited a slogan. Suddenly, except for Abbot Huiwen, all the court heads in the field were in disbelief. They did not expect that the Shaolin Temple would lose when only one person from the Jingang Temple had participated in On Buddha. For a moment, all the disciples of the Shaolin Temple felt sad. They felt that the face of the Shaolin Temple was trampled on by the Jingang Temple, but they could not resist. Because this was the truth. Ba Tuo, the Bodhisattva of the Jingang Temple, won 9 rounds in a row and won the On Buddha. Since the On Buddha is over, we will take our leave first. Thank you for disturbing the Shaolin Temple for so long. The second-grade monk of the Jingang Temple glanced at the audience. When he saw that no one dared to look at him, he slowly said. The court heads looked pale, and some of them even began to breathe unsteadily. After today, once the results of the On Buddha between the Shaolin Temple and the Jingang Temple spread, the title of the head of the 4 Buddhist temples of the Shaolin Temple would be handed over to the Jingang Temple. When they thought of the title that the ancestors of the eminent monks had obtained but lost because of the incompetence of the younger generation, all the disciples of the Shaolin Temple, including Abbot Huiwen, felt their hearts bleeding. Until the people of the Jingang Temple left, there was still silence outside the Hall of Great Strength. I am ashamed to face the ancestors. The court head of the Chores Hall looked up to the sky and sighed. His face suddenly turned red, and he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Court head, what happened to you? Junior brother, are you okay? Many disciples of the Chores Hall were shocked. Abbot Huiwen even took a step forward and appeared in front of the court head. He reached out his right hand. A moment later, Abbot Huiwen shook his head. Junior brother is fine. He is just too emotional, plus his qi and blood are declining. Not far away, Su Qin looked at the court head of the Chores Hall who had collapsed on the ground and was silent. For 10 years, the court head of the Chores Hall had been good to Su Qin. He often wanted to transfer Su Qin to the Arhat Hall or the warrior monastery, instead of being a sweeping monk. However, these good intentions were rejected by Su Qin. Is the reputation of the Shaolin Temple so important to you? Su Qin whispered to himself. The next moment, Su Qin turned and left. Outside the Shaolin Temple, the group of people from the Diamond Temple were heading in a certain direction. Ba Tuo, the abbot will be overjoyed when we return this time. If not for you, the Shaolin Temple would not have handed over the position of the head of the 4 Buddhist temples so easily. The second-rank monk of the Diamond Temple looked at Ba Tuo and said with relief. His name was Tong Ru, and he was the current guardian of the Diamond Temple with a second-rank cultivation. As the Arhat of the Diamond Temple, Ba Tuo naturally had someone protecting him, and Tong Ru was Ba Tuo's guardian. Uncle Master, is what we are doing really the right thing? Ba Tuo could not help but ask. Of course it is. Tong Ru said affirmatively. The battle of ideals is only about winning or losing, not right or wrong. Hearing this, Ba Tuo's eyes were filled with thoughts. Suddenly, at this moment, the guardian of the Diamond Temple, Tong Ru, seemed to have sensed something and looked up. Under a withered Bodhi tree, a young monk in gray robes was standing there silently. The guardian of the Diamond Temple, Tong Ru, frowned. You are a disciple of the Shaolin Temple? Tong Ru asked in a loud voice. This was the territory of the Shaolin Temple. Other than the Shaolin Temple, there were no monks from other temples. The young monk in gray robes nodded and then shook his head. This young monk was naturally Su Qin, who had arrived a long time ago. I have long heard that the Arhat of the Diamond Temple is the reincarnation of Arhat. I am here this time to discuss Buddhism with you. Su Qin said unhurriedly. Discuss Buddhism? Tong Ru was slightly stunned. My temple has already discussed Buddhism with you in the Shaolin Temple. The results are out, and Abbot Huiwen has no objections. Why are you here again? Uncle Master, since you are a senior brother of the Shaolin Temple, let's discuss it again. Ba Tuo spoke and took a step forward. With a solemn expression, he said, I wonder how senior brother will discuss the Dharma? We will discuss it as it should be. Su Qin smiled and said calmly. Ba Tuo clasped his hands and said, Senior brother, can you tell me what is Buddha? Ba Tuo had asked the same question in the Shaolin Temple just now. He had left the 9 Shaolin Temple at a loss. What was Buddha? The Buddha, in Buddhism, was naturally the Buddha. But who was the Buddha? A human? A god? A ghost? A demon? No one knew. No one dared to make wild guesses. Tong Ru, the guardian of the temple, shook his head. Even the abbot of the Diamond Temple was stumped by this question, let alone Su Qin. Tong Ru could naturally see that Su Qin's status in the Shaolin Temple was not high. Otherwise, he would not be wearing gray robes. The reason he stopped them here was probably because he was unwilling to accept the result. But so what if he was unwilling to accept the result? The younger generation of the Shaolin Temple was crushed by Ba Tuo of the Diamond Temple. Could it be that there was a disciple of the Shaolin Temple who could defeat Ba Tuo? How was that possible? What is Buddha? At this time, Su Qin repeated in a low voice. His voice became louder and louder until it finally reverberated in everyone's ears. I am Buddha. Boom! As soon as these words came out, all the monks of the Diamond Temple, including the guardian of the temple, were stunned. They had never seen such an arrogant person who called himself Buddha. How dare you? The guardian of the temple, Tong Ru, suddenly reacted and was about to reprimand him. However, he saw a scene that he would never believe in his life. A golden Buddha suddenly appeared behind Su Qin. He pointed to the sky with one hand and touched the ground with the other. There was boundless zen in his solemnity. He spoke with a magnificent voice. In heaven and on earth, only I am supreme. Under the Bodhi tree, Su Qin walked 9 steps. Then he pointed to the sky with one hand and touched the ground with the other. He looked solemn. In heaven and on earth, only I am supreme. This, all the monks of the Diamond Temple were stunned. Ba Tuo looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He trembled as he looked at Su Qin. Chapter 18. This is a Buddha, a true Buddha. Ba Tuo was in a daze. He had been a disciple of the Titanium Temple since he was young and had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the temple. He had 1,000 imaginations of Buddha in his mind. But now, only then did Ba Tuo realize just how wrong he was. A real Buddha with an immortal golden body was not something he could imagine. This is? The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, struggled out of his shock. His tone was filled with shock. The Buddha's light spread and illuminated the surroundings. Tong Ru felt that every strand of inner strength in his body was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Even moving was difficult, let alone circulating it. The other 7 disciples of the Titanium Temple were in an even worse state. They sat on the ground with blank faces. Time passed. After a while, the Buddha's light slowly dissipated. When the Buddha's light completely disappeared, the people of the Titanium Temple came to their senses. Where is that person? One of the disciples of the Titanium Temple muttered. When he said that, only then did they realize that there was no one under the Bodhi tree in the distance. The Shaolin Temple is unfathomable. The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, sighed with a complicated expression. At this moment, he only wanted to have a good chat with the person who was rumored to be the cause of the decline of the Shaolin Temple. How could the Shaolin Temple decline if it could produce such a young disciple who could trigger such a magnificent Buddha's light? If it was declining, then the Titanium Temple might as well be destroyed. At this moment, a disciple of the Titanium Temple asked cautiously, "Did we win or lose this Buddha's discourse?" The other disciples' hearts tightened as they looked at Batu. Even the Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, looked at Batu. Win or lose? Batu smiled. How can we win when discussing Buddha's discourse? Martial uncle, let's return to the Titanium Temple. The Shaolin Temple lives up to its name. There's no need to think about it anymore. After Ba Tuo finished speaking, he walked toward the Titanium Temple. The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, sighed and followed him. The remaining 7 Vajra Temple's disciples looked at each other and followed behind Tong Ru, the temple guardian. The Titanium Temple. The Dharmaraja of the temple, Tong Ru, told the abbot of the Vajra Temple everything that had happened. The abbot of the Titanium Temple was silent for a long time before he said softly, "Could it be that the Shaolin Temple of this generation is going to have a real Arhat?" Arhat? Tong Ru's expression was one of shock. Arhat of Buddhism was equivalent to a martial arts legend in Jianghu. He was a peerless existence that transcended the 9th grade martial arts system. Every Arhat or martial arts legend represented absolute invincibility. When Su Qin returned to the Shaolin Temple, most of the disciples outside the Hall of Great Strength had been evacuated by Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. I didn't expect that just a little stimulation would cause such a huge reaction. Furthermore, it consumed more than half of my inner strength. Su Qin rubbed between his eyebrows and calmed down the golden Buddha that represented the inheritance of the Buddha's palm, in the depths of his primal aperture between his eyebrows. Just now, when he was discussing Buddhism with Ba Tuo, the Bodhisattva of the Vajra Temple, Su Qin thought of Buddha's palm. The Buddha's palm was known as the Buddha's personal inheritance. In today's world, there was probably no existence that was closer to Buddha than the Buddha's palm. Therefore, Su Qin slightly stimulated the primal aperture between his eyebrows. Although Su Qin still couldn't use the Buddha's palm, it didn't mean that he couldn't stimulate it. As a result, the moment Su Qin stimulated it, the golden Buddha appeared. In this way, it saved Su Qin a lot of trouble. What level of martial arts is the Buddha's palm? Su Qin once again had this doubt in his heart. Su Qin is a grade 1 great grandmaster and has a lot of internal strength, but even so, a little stimulation of the Buddha's palm consumed more than half of his internal strength. If he really wanted to use it, wouldn't he be sucked dry in an instant? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he returned to the handyman court. At this time, the handyman court head had woken up and his face was ruddy. However, Su Qin felt that the life aura of the court head had once again decreased a lot, and he was a little closer to the end of the Shouyuan's life. Su Qin guessed that the court head may pass away in 5 to 10 years at most. Sigh. Su Qin sighed in his heart, but stepped forward and asked, "Court head, are you okay?" "I'm fine." The court head waved his hand. "I was too emotional just now, but I'm much better now." Speaking of this, the court head paused and said with emotion, "I'm old, my vitality is declining, I have no choice but to accept it. In the next half a month." Abbot Huiwen of the Shaolin Temple and the court heads were waiting for the results of the On Buddha of the Vajra Temple. However, to Abbot Huiwen's surprise, the Vajra Temple was still silent even after a few months, as if they had never discussed On Buddha with the Shaolin Temple. Logically speaking, if the Vajra Temple won the On Buddha, they should have announced it. Why is there no reaction at all? The court head of the Commandment Court was puzzled. Although it was difficult to give up the position of the head of the 4 Buddhist temples in the world, a win was a win, and a loss was a loss. The Shaolin Temple disdained to deny this point. However, the premise that the Shaolin Temple did not deny it was that the Vajra Temple spread the result. Was it possible for the Shaolin Temple to take the initiative to say that they lost to the Vajra Temple? How could this be possible? As a major martial arts sect in the world, the Shaolin Temple also cared about their reputation. Besides, in the previous On Buddha sessions, it was always the winner who did this. What the hell is going on? Abbot Huiwen was also puzzled. Since the Vajra temple did not say anything, Abbot Huiwen did not want to ask. As a result, most forces in the world did not know that the Shaolin Temple and the Vajra Temple had a on Buddha session. As for the small number of forces that knew a little about it, they thought that the Vajra Temple had lost and did not want to make it public. The Vajra Temple felt that they had lost to the Shaolin Temple. After waiting for a few months, they were also puzzled as to why the Shaolin Temple did not say anything about the on Buddha session. Regarding this result, the abbot of the Vajra Temple could only think that the Shaolin Temple was too lazy to care about it. And the culprit, who caused all this, Su Qin, naturally returned to his usual days of signing in and sweeping the floor. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the cultivation technique, Withered Tree Divine Art. In front of the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion, Su Qin looked happy. The Withered Tree Divine Art was one of the unique techniques of the Shaolin Temple. Its greatest use was not for offense or defense, but for concealment and disguise. Once the Withered Tree Divine Art was cultivated to the advanced level, one could control one's own aura at will, truly becoming like a withered tree and ethereal. Not bad. The Withered Tree Divine Art and the indestructible Vajra Divine Art are a perfect match. Su Qin was very satisfied. Originally, the indestructible Vajra Divine Art could allow Su Qin to completely conceal his aura. Now, with the addition of the Withered Tree Divine Art, how powerful would it be? Just as Su Qin was about to try the effect of the Withered Tree Divine Art, his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 19. If a disciple familiar with the Shaolin Temple was here, they would have noticed that Su Qin was looking in the direction of the Shaolin Temple's forbidden area, the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Su Qin has been in the Shaolin Temple for more than 10 years and has visited almost the entire Shaolin Temple. There are only a few forbidden areas that he has not set foot in. The Back Mountain is one, and the Thousand Buddhas Hall is another. Whether it is the Back Mountain or the Thousand Buddhas Hall, Su Qin can sense the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. It is because of this that Su Qin did not approach. The Back Mountain is the place where the Shaolin Temple suppressed the Devil Buddha 900 years ago. Even now, there is still a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster guarding it. Su Qin does not find it strange. After all, according to Su Qin's understanding, the Demon Buddha 900 years ago was a powerful existence that could compete with an Arhat and was completely above Grade 1. In order to suppress this kind of devil, it is definitely difficult to rely on the seal alone. No matter how strong the seal is, it will eventually decline with the passage of time. At this time, someone needs to constantly perfect the seal so that it can always suppress the Devil Buddha. And with the power of the Devil Buddha, only a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster can barely get close without being affected. And this is under the premise that the Devil Buddha is suppressed by the seal. Finally, in order to ensure the absolute safety of the seal of the Devil Buddha, the Back Mountain is guarded by a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, a holy monk. This should be a top secret, and even the current abbot of the Shaolin Temple does not know about it. This is also the reason why the Shaolin Temple does not have a Grade 1A holy monk guarding it. In fact, the Shaolin Temple is a great sect that has been passed down for thousands of years. It is a Buddhist holy land that came out of Arhat. How could it not have any secrets? In addition to the Back Mountain, there is also the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Thousand Buddhas Hall. However, just now, Su Qin clearly felt that the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Thousand Buddhas Hall had suddenly dissipated. This kind of dissipation did not mean that it had disappeared. Instead, it was like a candle in the wind that had persisted for decades before finally being extinguished. Is he dead? Su Qin seemed to be deep in thought. The Thousand Buddhas Hall was a forbidden area of the Shaolin Temple because it was the place where a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple passed away. Only a first-rank a holy monk was qualified to enter the Thousand Buddhas Hall when Shouyuan's time was up. Do you want to go take a look and sign a contract? Su Qin stroked his chin as a thought occurred to him. The Thousand Buddhas Hall was one of the few places Su Qin had not set foot in. In other words, Su Qin had yet to sign in at the Thousand Buddha Palace. According to the aura, the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster must be dead. There should be no living things in the Thousand Buddhas Hall at this moment. Even if I go in, I won't be discovered. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he slowly pondered. Originally, even if the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in the Thousand Buddhas Hall was really dead, Su Qin would enter after a while to be on the safe side. But after signing in, Su Qin obtained the Withered Wood Divine Art. This Shaolin Temple's secret technique is good at concealment and disguise. Coupled with the great accomplishment of the Invincible Vajra Divine Art, Su Qin is confident that even if he walked in front of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, as long as the other party did not see him with their own eyes, the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would not notice him. Unless Su Qin deliberately leaked his aura. Let me familiarize myself with the Withered Wood Divine Art first. Su Qin's thoughts moved, and suddenly, everything about the Withered Wood Divine Art poured into his mind. In a short period of time, Su Qin's understanding of the Withered Wood Divine Art has reached an incredible level. Shaped like a dead tree, divine like nothingness, Su Qin's aura was faintly discernible and almost completely disappeared. Chirp, chirp, chirp. At this moment, several birds landed on Su Qin's shoulders. Obviously, they regarded Su Qin as a dead tree and did not find anything unusual. Phew. Inhale. While operating the Withered Wood Divine Art, Su Qin slowly used the great accomplishment of the Invincible Vajra Divine Art to restrain his aura once again. Suddenly, several birds that landed on Su Qin's shoulders seemed to be frightened and quickly flew away. In the eyes of these birds, they completely lost their sense of Su Qin. At this moment, Su Qin can't even be regarded as a dead tree. He can only be regarded as a mass of nothingness. Of course, in fact, Su Qin still exists, but his aura has fundamentally disappeared. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin exclaimed in his heart. I can enter the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Su Qin suddenly made a decision. At night, Su Qin avoided the patrolling monks and stood in front of the Thousand Buddhas Hall. After confirming that there was no one inside, Su Qin pushed open the door and slowly walked in. The light in the hall was a bit dim. But Su Qin, as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, has long been able to see things in the night. There are many Buddha statues in the Thousand Buddhas Hall, and under each Buddha statue is the place where a holy monk passed away. The Buddha statues are overlapping, and at a glance, there are at least hundreds of them. I didn't expect that the Shaolin Temple would give birth to so many Grade 1A holy monk. Su Qin looked emotional. One must know that in today's world, any Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is a peerless powerhouse whose name shakes the world. They are enough to take charge of a great sect. And the Shaolin Temple has given birth to hundreds of such Grade 1 Great Grandmasters? However, Su Qin thought about it again and felt that it was normal. The Shaolin Temple has existed for thousands of years, and hundreds of Grade 1A holy monk are not that many. Su Qin slowly walked towards the depths of the Thousand Buddhas Hall. With Withered Wood Divine Art and Invincible Vajra Divine Art, Su Qin was like a ghost at this moment, without any movement. If one did not see it with their own eyes, even a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster would not be able to detect it. So, Su Qin walked to the deepest part of the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Not far away, a figure wearing cloth clothes was sitting there stiffly. There was no aura. Obviously, he was dead. Cloth clothes? Not a monk's robe? The Grade 1 hidden in the Thousand Buddhas Hall is not someone from the Shaolin Temple. Su Qin was surprised. Originally, Su Qin thought that the Grade 1 aura in the Thousand Buddhas Hall was a Grade 1A holy monk from the Shaolin Temple. But it seems that this is not the case. Interesting. Su Qin did not approach immediately. A Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, even if he died, may leave something behind near his body. Although Su Qin is not afraid, he is also afraid of trouble. It just so happens that I am in the Thousand Buddhas Hall. I can sign in there. Su Qin's eyes lit up. It was already late at night. It was the early morning of the second day, and the daily sign-in opportunity was refreshed. System, sign in for me. Su Qin said in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the magic power, True Eye. A mechanical and cold voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Magic power? True eye. Su Qin's pupils shrank. In the past 10 years, Su Qin has signed in countless divine arts, spirit pills, and heaven and earth treasures. But this is the first time he has heard of a magic power. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.